Here are 4 things you need to know if you have a pension. Pension planning is unique because less than 20% of people even have a pension nowadays. And so we work with a lot of people who have pensions. And so we really try to emphasize 4 of these points here of how important it is to plan for this moving forward. And so today's episode of Joe Knows Retirement, we're talking pensions.
Joe knows taxes.
Joe knows the market.
Joe knows Social Security.
Joe knows income planning.
Joe knows pickleball? No.
This is Joe Knows Retirement.
So I've already mentioned this, but the first thing I really want to emphasize about pensions is you truly are unique. Less than 20% of people have a pension, and the planning is a lot different. It's a lot more advanced than if you don't have a pension. So we get a lot of people who come to us who already are working with advisors, and the advisors basically don't understand how pension planning works. They act like they know how the pensions work. They seem to understand that it's a guaranteed monthly payment for life, but they may not understand the more advanced estate planning and the more advanced tax planning that goes into that, which we're going to talk about in today's video. And so you really want to make sure you're working with a team who understands how pensions operate, someone who is understanding how Roth conversions play a part into pension planning, how to make sure investment allocation and income planning is done right in regards to how the pension can play out, but also understands how the survivorship option is going to work, things like the widow's penalty, which we'll talk about here today. You want to make sure all of that's covered so that nothing's missing, because if you're working with an advisor who never works with pensions on the daily, they may not be used to these types of strategies. And we see that often out there with people who come to see us. And just understand that there's advisors who specialize in different things. Some specialize in accumulation planning and just saving and investing. Others specialize in retirement planning. Some specialize in retirement planning for people with pensions. And so you just want to make sure you're working with the right team there. The second thing we always want people to know with pensions is in regards to the question of, will you be in a lower tax bracket in retirement? And my question to you with a pension is that going to be true? And as we all know, that's typically not the case anymore for those who have been diligent savers and those with a pension. And obviously the reason why is because not only do you have Social Security potentially, depending on what kind of pension you have, but also you have a pension on top of that, or we have required minimum distributions or investment withdrawals, and that could put us in an even higher tax bracket. And so you've heard this saying all your life of you'll be in a lower tax bracket because you no longer have an income. And now that can be true for many people out there, but not for those with pensions. Again, remember, you are unique. Your situation, your planning is different than what most people are out there. You also have to remember that Social Security used to be tax-free before 1985. And so in that case, there would be more people in lower tax brackets because Social Security wasn't factored in. But now up to 85% of Social Security is taxable. And the majority of people with pensions are seeing that be fully taxable, which bumps up their income even higher and now leads them into higher tax brackets in the future. And then the other consideration there is just in regards to tax rate. I mean, we know tax rates right now are among historical lows. We don't know if that's always going to be the case. If you look at historical tax rates, right now it's at 37%. If the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act expires, which it's set to do, the highest tax bracket will go up to 39.6%. So we do know in the near future that is set to happen unless something gets passed to change that. But if you even go back further in time, the highest tax bracket has been as high as 70% or even in 94% after World War II. And not saying that everyone would pay that tax rate, but it just shows you historically where we are at to give you a gauge of that highest bracket, because typically the lower brackets are an indication of where the higher one is. And so we just have to understand that of, yeah, you may not only be in a lower tax bracket, you may be in the same or higher tax bracket, but you also may be paying higher tax rates. So that may mean we want to look to take advantage of this and start to implement some tax planning strategies now to get ahead of that while taxes are on sale, as I always call. And so people with pensions, we're looking at doing some strategies now to utilize these tax sales. And that's where point number 3 comes in. And this is one of the most important tax planning strategies out there right now. This is one that if you haven't been doing, I highly encourage you to write this down, highlight it, circle it. One of our advisors says, hey, make sure you put this one on your fridge because this is something that can save you hundreds of thousands of dollars in retirement if you've been a diligent saver and you have a pension. And this strategy is simply called a Roth conversion. And you've probably heard of a Roth conversion before. It's really simple in concept. We'll talk about it here that it gets really complex and there's a lot more to it that you want to be aware of. But basically a Roth conversion is you move money from a tax-deferred vehicle to a tax-free. So if you have an IRA or 401k, any employer retirement account, a 403b, a TSP if you're a federal employee, whatever that may be, you can move that to a Roth IRA. And if you do that, then you have to pay taxes on that transition now. So if you move $100,000 from there to there, well, you got to pay taxes on that, and that can be whatever your income tax bracket is that year. And so we ultimately have to look at this and see, hey, does this make sense for us? Well, let's go to point number 2 that we just discussed. Do we expect tax rates to be higher? Do we expect our income to be higher? Do we expect our income to be the same? So if those two things are in line and we expect that tax rates will be higher, income will be higher, the same, Roth conversions make sense almost all the time in those scenarios. And so you just have to do an analysis for yourself to see what that plays out. So it's not as easy as just moving it over. You got to do a full analysis. With our clients, we do tax reports that extend out 10 plus years to show us if we do a conversion today, where's that going to lead us to be in the future? How is that going to impact our Medicare premiums now, but how is it also going to impact them in the future? Because it may make sense to pay more in Medicare premiums today if we're 63 or older, because Medicare goes back 2 years. But is that going to save us from paying more in Medicare premiums for the rest of our life? And so we have to run those types of calculations to see what makes sense. So not only is Social Security tax impacted, Medicare premiums are impacted. You also need to be aware of things like the NIT, net investment tax, and also the AMT. There's also certain credits, deductions that can phase in and out that you want to be aware of. But the key is you want to understand how all this works together. Some people will tell you, just look at the tax brackets and go off that. Well, that's not always a full story of how to make a good decision here, because even if you're in a 12% tax bracket, well, if you convert, you could force Social Security now to become that 85% taxable, whereas maybe it's not as much taxable. And so now you may be paying way more than 12% to do that conversion, and it may not make sense. Or if you're in the 24%, some people say just go to the top of 24%. Well, if you do that, you're going to force a lot of extra Medicare tiers to be hit that you're going to have to then pay for 2 years in the future. So again, it's all about running the numbers. It's all about having an analysis there. But the key thing that I want you to take away from this video is that you're in a position where it's probably going to make sense to look into this. The majority of the clients we work with pensions are doing Roth conversions. Again, this is not guidance or specific recommendation to do that. I don't know your specific situation. This is all general. I just hope this can open your eyes to see where you're at. And if you are looking for guidance on that, and you are looking for this type of planning that we talk about on this channel, you can schedule a time with our team. We can have a 15-minute call to see if we could be a good fit to help you moving forward and help you things like tax planning and Roth conversion planning and RMD planning and all of these things that play together. And so you can go to the link below and schedule that time, and we'd love to see how we can help you there. And then also on that, as I just mentioned with RMDs, that's required minimum distributions at age 73 and 75. As we all know, let's say you have $1 million and you're 60 years old. Well, by the time you get to 75, when you're required to take out money and the government forces you to take out money at that point, well, you're going to probably have about $2 million if we just see a reasonable rate of return, a very conservative return over that time. And now your RMD at that point is 4% of $2 million, which is about $80,000 that you're forced to take out on top of pension, on top of Social Security, that can force you into those higher tax brackets we've been talking about. So the idea of a Roth conversion can help there, because now you can bring that RMD down, and now you're not have to pay as much in taxes. So something to really be encouraged and look forward to if that's you in that situation. And then the fourth thing that I want to talk about here is surrounding the widow's penalty. This is my least favorite part of the tax code, but it's also one of the most important if you're a married couple. If you're a married couple, there's two things that happen. One is Social Security gets reduced, right? You only get the higher the two that you get to keep due to the survivor planning option that you have with Social Security. The second thing is your tax brackets go from married filing jointly to single. And if you followed those brackets, you'll see that it gets cut in half, meaning you're going to have to pay nearly double the amount of taxes if you're single versus married. So if you are married or you're single, this is going to be important to you, because if you are single, this is showing that you're going to be at a disadvantage moving forward, which makes the planning now even more important. But also if you're married, utilize the married filing jointly brackets with things like Roth conversions that we're talking about, versus having to do it in single and having to take out all this money at single tax rates, where now you're going to pay way more in taxes. Is typically what we see. And so if you have a survivorship option on that pension especially, you're going to leave your spouse in a much higher situation, tax situation, because of the higher income. For example, if you're getting $50,000 of pension, that may not cause you to pay excessive amount of taxes in our married filing jointly rates, rates, but 50,000 in single rates is going to raise you much higher. It's going to raise you all the way into the 22% tax bracket potentially with Social Security very quickly. And so those are things that we need to be aware of so that we're not overpaying in taxes over time. And so, like I said, if we can just have more Roth in the picture for that scenario, now when that spouse single takes out money that they need for income, because now they only have one of the two Social Securities, now it can come from a Roth, which doesn't impact their taxes, and now that leads to more money in their pocket. So whenever you talk about that Roth conversion story, you always have to see, does it make sense to pay the tax now for what I'm going to get moving forward? And then I can tell you that when we run the numbers, typically it always makes sense in most cases. But again, this is not specific guidance. Make sure you work with a professional team who can run all these analyses for you. And we'd also recommend to make sure you have the right type of software, because you can try to do Roth conversion on paper, but typically what we see is mistakes are made and it doesn't get done in the most optimal amount. So if you're really trying to maximize that decision, work with a team who specializes in this, who does this every day, that has the right tools and resources to do so, is what we'd say there. So also on the survivor penalty or pension for the spouse, understand you don't have to take that. And we see some of our clients not take that. It's not because they don't care about their spouse. Typically they love their spouse dearly, but there's other things that you can look at with that. And again, this is not recommendation to not take the survivor pension, because we do recommend many of our clients to take that because it can be generous, and especially depending on the type of plan. But you can, if you take that survivor pension option, you have to pay for it. And that can be a pretty hefty amount, often 10% of that pension. So if you're getting a $50,000 pension, to stay on that topic, you could be paying $5,000 a year in some cases for your spouse to retain that pension. I do want to say that $50,000 a year over a long period of time is a lot of money. So if you were to pass away early, that survivor pension can make a lot of sense. But if you were to pass away at 80 and then your spouse passed away at 81, well, you only get $50,000 for 1 year, but maybe you just paid 30 years or 20 years, let's call it 20 years at $5,000, you paid $100,000 to get $50,000 of gain. And does that make sense? So I'm just throwing hypotheticals out there for you to get an idea. I don't know what your specific numbers show and if it makes sense or not, but do understand that maybe instead of paying that $5,000 a year, maybe you take that $5,000 and you do some life insurance policy so that, maybe your spouse passes away first and that survivor pension never pays out. You're paying $5,000 a year and it never pays out because they die first, and it doesn't go to any of the kids. So that's a consideration, whereas a life insurance policy could still pay out to the kids if something happens to your spouse first, or maybe you just don't want the coverage anymore, or maybe your spouse only dies a couple years after. Well, now there could be more accumulated money there that they could use and enjoy the way they want to. And it also can help from a tax planning standpoint with the widow's penalty, because now the widow is not going to have as much income. Life insurance is tax-free on the death benefit, whereas that pension is going to be taxable every single year. So you can add that into the calculation to see what type of strategy is going to make sense there. But the key is just be aware of the widow's penalty. You got to act on it now. If we don't act on it now, we're losing time to take advantage of the married filing jointly rates. But also, as I mentioned, tax rates are lower right now. And right now is a really optimal and efficient time to be doing some of these strategies. And so those are the things to look at there. And as I mentioned, those are just 4 of the planning items that we recommend people with pensions to look into. There's many more out there. And so you really want to have a comprehensive checklist to make sure you're checking all the boxes. With the clients we work with, we call it our 5-pillar approach. And every client that we bring on to our firm, we literally go through a process once they're a client that is typically at least 5 meetings where we're going through every single pillar and ensuring we're not missing anything in those pillars, so they don't have to worry about missing anything in retirement, so they can have all the boxes checked. And then every single year ongoing, we're doing deep dives into that plan to see what needs adjusted and changed due to tax rule changes or different changes out there in the environment, to make sure we're on top of things. And we reach out to clients every quarter. So again, just being proactive about your planning in retirement is almost more important than just having the foundational plan as well. So understand how all of that plays together. And if that is the type of planning you're talking about, if the video today is a type of planning that you're looking for moving forward in retirement, you can reach out to our team here in the description below. As I mentioned earlier, you can click that link, 15-minute call with us to see if we could be a good fit. And if so, we'll schedule another session to explore further and look to make that decision if we feel that we have the ability to serve what your needs are, and to see if you're a good fit for what we do, and also make sure that you're comfortable with what we do and who we are and all of that. So that's that's what that opportunity is. For those who are avid viewers of this YouTube channel, we always enjoy engaging with you. If you don't mind dropping in the comments below of what your feel is on all these channels, what more videos can we do, what you like about this video, give some interaction here so we can have some fun. We do try to reply back to all the comments there, and if you have any questions on any of the content we do, we'd be glad to address that as well. So with that being said, that's all we have on today's episode of Joe Knows Retirement, and we'll see you on the next one.